Welcome to Dark Screen Society. We're in for a special episode today, and we want to see if you have succumbed to the darkness, because we all have definitely succumbed to the darkness. I'm here with my co-host Seth,
Hello.
Gigi,
Hello.
and today we are very honored because we have an incredible special friend of the show as a guest co-host on the show today, and that is Justin from SlasherTalk. Say hello, Justin.
Hello. I'm happy to report that I succumbed to the darkness.
I definitely
succumbed.
succumbed. I definitely succumbed.
There's a lot of succumbing going on.
Yeah.
And if you're wondering why Justin is sitting in, well, he's sitting in not only because he is a dear friend of the podcast, but our friend Brian is in Ireland and he is unable to have seen Nosferatu because they have a later release date and he did not get an early screening. But the show must go on because Nosferatu is the biggest horror release of 2024. And we need to talk about it, especially with the online banter of how split the decisions and the viewing are upon seeing this, what some of us on this show feel is a masterpiece. So initially, what were your thoughts and how do you feel the hype factor was leading into your viewing of Nosferatu? And Seth was the one that's seen it first out of the group, so we'll start with him.
So I love Robert Eggers. I love The Witch. I like The Lighthouse. I didn't like The Northman. But when I heard that he was going to tackle Nosferatu, a vampire film, and it was his passion project, I was already excited for it. And I saw some reviews coming in before I got to go see it, the early screening I went to, and they were all praising it. So I was kind of already hyped. I actually went into the screening worried that I was actually going to end up hating it. But at the end of the movie, I literally sat there in my seat, just gathering my thoughts because of how blown away I was by the movie. I was taken aback. I've never really experienced a movie like this before. And I definitely can see that there is a hype train for this movie, but there is a good reason for it. I think this film is visually one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. The score is haunting. The acting's flawless. There's so much to like about it. Yeah.
Yeah. We'll get to the things that you liked about it. So, and for all our viewers out there in the audience listening, we're going to do this in a couple different sections. Yeah. We're going to start out with our general thoughts before, after, and then we are absolutely going to go into full spoiler territory, but there will be a warning during this episode to let you know if you want to choose to succumb to the spoilers or if you would like to turn away and not hear them. So how did you feel? What were your emotions leading into your viewing of Nosferatu, Justin?
Similar to Seth, I'm a big Robert Eggers fan. So when I saw that he was tackling Nosferatu, I went into it pretty much fully expecting what I saw on screen, to be totally honest. But I went into the film wondering, because when I read that Eggers was tackling Nosferatu, I was like, the balls that it takes to remake such a classic in a movie that the story that I thought everybody knew. And what choices does he make to make his vision his? Because if you change it a lot to make it entirely his, you've got people screaming, saying you ruined it. And then if you don't change a whole lot, you've got people saying, then what's the fucking point? So there's just that line of I was wondering how he was going to handle it, and it met all of my expectations.
How about you, Gigi? How did you feel leading into it?
No, that's a fair synopsis, because I think that is such a worry that directors go into, where it's okay, am I changing it enough or am I changing it too much? And I think you're going to get shit on both ends, no matter what you do. Going into it, I knew I was going to love it. I knew that I was going to really enjoy it. I love anything that's very atmospheric like that, where it's very dark and brooding and gloomy and gothic. So I already knew that I was going to love that it's a time period piece, and it's bringing us to this cozy but creepy vibe. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about like, okay, I knew I was going to love Bill Skarsgård as Nosferatu. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about their depiction of Nosferatu. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Where I was
That
like, he's
makes
going to
sense.
nail whatever depiction they had, but am I going to like the depiction that they created for him? So, and I have some thoughts.
Yeah.
So, I'm excited to get into it.
Absolutely, and I can't wait to hear everybody's thoughts when we dig a little bit deeper into this. I think Eggers was up against an insurmountable force of who he could please with whatever he chose to do with this film is how I
Yeah.
thought. And that's
Yeah.
starting to really roll out as reviews are starting to pour out. You're starting to see because not only did he need to cater to, the extreme like cinephile club of people that herald the 22 film as an artistic masterpiece just for how it was created at that time. But then you have this tried and true story of the adaptation that came from and the subject matter of that to transition into his film, but also the casual viewer that does want something different or doesn't dig deep into how the original was made. So he was up against it. And like you said, no matter what he did, there's going to be fans, there's going to be, naysayers. So it's a tough movie, but I agree with what everybody said. Like when they announced these movies as a influencer and a critic and they announce these reimaginings of these classic films or films that we hold dear that might not even be classics, sometimes they'll announce a director and I'm like, wow, that like, like Lee Cronin with The Mummy. Like, I don't know if that fits for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or when they did Fede Alvarez in Evil Dead, like at that point in time, we didn't know. We didn't know
Yeah.
that movie was going to turn out like that. So it's like it leaves you questioning. But when they said Nosferatu and the word Eggers together, I was like, there's no other name you could have announced to make this film. So leading to that, what did you think about the film? Like, what is, without any spoilers, like what is just a quick synopsis of what Nosferatu meant to you, how you felt about it, and some general thoughts? And we will start with you, Gigi.
Oh, okay. I I really, really I really, 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 really liked it. I didn't love it, but I'm only saying I didn't love it because I would give it like a general like 9 out of 10. But like I still feel like that's like loving a movie.
Oh yeah.
Um I loved like the atmosphere, I loved the performances. Um the only thing that I thought was a little bit out of place was Aaron Taylor Johnson. Not that I thought that he was bad in the film, I just wasn't expecting so much of his role.
Mhm.
And there, and we'll talk about it in spoilers, but I had reservations about I guess the vibe or the reveal of Count Orlok.
Mhm.
I thought that was very lackluster. I was like, "Oh, I was expecting a way cooler reveal." But as far as like the movie as a whole, I thought it was like it's such like a modern day masterpiece, but I don't think it's going to be for everybody because it is like a classic horror movie. So like I think people are going into it thinking like, "Oh, this is going to be like a crazy scary monster flick like blood and it's like no, he's making a modern horror movie, so or like a modern classic.
Mhm.
So but I liked that about the movie. So um yeah, overall I would say that I loved it.
Seth, initial thoughts, like just
I I
quickly synopsis.
I felt the same. And actually, I have a quick question to ask you guys. Did you all see the 1922 film prior to seeing this one? Like, did you
Yes.
see it like years before?
Yeah.
No, I had watched it like prior.
Okay, because I watched it like the day before. I didn't end up finishing it because I fell asleep because it
Yeah,
was late.
so fair, yeah.
But I wanted to see like if that changes your opinion on this movie at all. Like, did it like? Because I know a lot of people are comparing it to that. Is it like a direct like how it looks in that original 1922 film? Is it like directly looking like that? If that makes sense?
No,
No,
that does.
Yeah.
yeah, I
So
understand what you're saying.
it's he definitely like tried to stay true to a lot of scenes in there. So like, and I had to remember that because the reveal of Count Orlok, it's very similar to how it
Mhm.
is in the movie.
Mhm.
Like it's very like he's just like, I'm fucking here. And you're like, oh, you're just expecting it to be a little bit more grandiose because he's like, you know, they hid him away and everything. So I thought that that's what he was going to change, was like a bigger, scarier, like crazier
Mhm.
reveal. And it really wasn't that. It was kind of just like, oh, he's just there. Like, you
Well,
know,
Yeah.
and
because buildup was just
yes.
fantastic, and you're like, oh my god, yeah.
Yes, I think that's what it is like the buildup was there and like we heard his voice before we saw his face and like
Mhm.
all this stuff. And then he's just like sitting there. Like, you know what I mean? Because then like we didn't see his face when he was like standing there.
Mhm.
And so you're like, and that's what it's like in the original. Like he's
Okay.
just standing there and like almost like shot for shot. That's what it
Mhm.
is. It's just when they actually reveal it, I thought Eggers was gonna go more in like this grandiose way of how the marketing and the buildup of the actual movie was going to be. And that I felt like I was like, "Oh, that felt so flat to me." I was like,
Okay.
"Man." Um, but I feel but they did change some aspects. They did change he did change some things in the movie, but there are, for the most part, he did like stay pretty true to the original film.
Okay, that makes sense. I just wanted to ask that because I don't like. I wonder if it changes people's perspective on this movie, having seen that movie first, or like I'm gonna watch it now because I want to see how it compares, and if I still, I mean, I'm sure I'm gonna still like this movie more than the 1922 film,
Oh
but
yeah,
like
yeah.
I think it would be cool to kind of compare the two. But to answer your question, Chuck, I mean, I love the movie. You already know my thoughts on it, and we'll get into some spoilers on why I loved it later on. But kind of what Gigi said, it felt like a classic monster movie, and
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love those. Like I grew up watching Twilight Zone with my dad, the black and white, and it had a feeling to it that you don't get with horror movies really today anymore, where it's like you're thrust into this like gothic world with this like unknown creature, and it's like it's not jump scares, it's just it's creepy by like the way it makes you feel and the way, you know, Skarsgård speaks and the atmosphere. And I love that aspect about this movie and just how it elicits those emotions.
Mm.
Right. Justin, your thoughts, like just quick thoughts of what how you felt.
It's I mean, it's beautiful, it's haunting. It felt very much like a play on
Mhm.
Mhm.
screen. Like it was very
Mhm.
play-esque. And I'll just say, like, I feel like it's a disservice when I'm like talking about this Nosferatu. I'm like, oh, like this movie was great. It's not a movie. It's a film. Like,
Yeah.
if that makes any
It's
sense.
an experience.
Like this is an experience. It's a film, and
Mhm.
it's just
Mhm.
like that's the quickest way
I
that I
love
can
that.
describe
Yeah.
it. Is it's just like like you walk in and it just, from the opening scene, it just grabs a hold of you, and it's just like, let's go for 2.5 hours. It just sits in your brain, and it just like consumes you. I
Yeah.
just loved it.
Agreed. And I think that we're at the point now, like I think as you could hear from the audience, that we're struggling because it's a very difficult film to talk about without minor spoilers or
Yeah.
spoilers
Mhm.
because it's hard to describe. So I think we're going to put the warning in here now because I know a lot of the feedback I have for what we just generally talked about is a lot easier to talk about, like with some spoilers. So if you don't want to have anything about Nosferatu spoiled or ruined for you, this would be the turning away point in the episode. And I know we got there quicker than you may have thought. It just makes it a lot easier to describe. And I agree with what everybody said about the reveal,
Mhm.
except that I believe that's intentional.
Yeah.
I believe the grandness of his reveal wasn't supposed to be that way because we were so fixated on the story coming from Lily Rose Depp's character, and that would have, like, if it would have been more epic, it would have took away from everything that she built up with the fear. And I almost thought it being downplayed was more frightening because it's like it made it more tangible and more regular and more frightening to me because it wasn't this big grand in your face, oh, he's this gnarly looking demon monster thing. Like I think that added to the allure of the tone from the get-go for me personally.
Yeah.
And I've seen the 1922 and the Werner Herzog version, and I watched the 1922 prior to seeing the the new one. It's not for me. Like I respect what it did, but it's
Yeah,
it's dated enough that it becomes like slow to me, but
totally.
I can appreciate it. But I think the liberties that Eggers took with what he chose to change and what he chose to keep, because it is virtually shot for shot, he had no intention of remaking it. Like I didn't feel that at all with this film. Like it really felt like just a different voice reading the same book. And
Yeah.
whenever a different voice reads a same book, you get different inflections on different words and they mean different things to you. So it was just coming from the palette of a different artist with a different brush painting the same, picture. Um so if does anybody have any, what Gigi had said, there was a couple underwhelming things, but also you could explain as well about your theater experience, Gigi, that there was some issues with
Yes.
that may have affected the tone of the film. But
1,000%.
and if you'd like to shine out any negatives right off the bat that you felt, just didn't land for you, or
Yeah.
so go ahead.
Because I was like, I truly was expecting it to, like, I personally felt a little underwhelmed, but not that it was in any way, shape, or form a bad film.
Hmm.
But I think a lot of that, my theater experience was god awful. Everybody in my theater was getting up and down, talking like normal, regular this volume, and like there was girls in front of me taking shots like out of shooters, and I was like, what is happening here? This can't be a real experience. So I was like super distracted because the movie is like so atmospheric, and it's also like, unfortunately at times really hard to decipher what they're saying because of their like thick British accents. Like there was, and I, God bless Ralph Ineson, I loved him in this film, but I was like, what are you saying? Like the
Hmm.
entire time I could not understand him for the life of me. And there were even moments where like I could not understand Willem Dafoe because like it's almost like this mumblecore that they were doing, and I was like, what's happening? But so it's definitely a movie that I want to rewatch. One, because of my theater experience, but two, I think I would appreciate it so much more with captions, like where I'm like, oh, okay, this is like, I know, one, I already know what's going to happen in this story, but like two, I was like, okay, I can kind of get the gist of what's going on. But I feel like actually it's like, you know, the dialogue is obviously a huge factor in a movie. So I do want to rewatch it because of that. But another thing, kind of like what you were saying, Chuck, with the 1922, that it's dated for you. For me, it's not so much like, yes, it's dated, so it's like, okay, it's like obviously it's kind of boring. They only had so many limitations. I get its place in history because of how it transformed like this vampire genre. But for me, I am not really a big fan of movies that are so linear. And I think that's also why I felt pretty underwhelmed. Like, yes, we already know the story 100%. We already knew
Hmm.
what was going to happen, but it's more so my personal taste that I don't like when films are so incredibly linear. So there's no like mystery to it, or no like, it's like, oh, I know what's gonna happen. I'm just along for the ride. I'm just waiting for how it happens. You know what I mean? Where I'm more so like, I love like a good, not even like a twist, but it's like, ooh, like I didn't know that that was going to pop up, or like, oh, and that's definitely not the story of Nosferatu, because it is a classic, very more, those classic horror stories are very linear. So
Hmm.
that's just my take on why it felt somewhat underwhelming. But I I didn't even really go into it thinking that. Like, I think I was just so hyped up on the hype of it and the aesthetic of it and everything, that I was like, it's going to be a 10 out of 10. That when I wasn't even thinking like, oh, well, I'm not really a huge fan of super linear stories like this.
Mhm.
So also why I hate biopics, where I'm like, we're just following them along, like, So so yeah, I that's the only thing for me that was kind of underwhelming, but I could have
Hmm.
anticipated that.
Seth.
I would say too, real quick. I think your part about the dialogue and having subtitles, I think that's like a huge piece of it, because when I saw it, like having a quiet theater is super important for this movie, because I think what makes this movie so great is the dialogue. Like the things that they
Yes.
say in this movie are just like unlike anything I've heard. Like the sunrise, the crow of cock. Like
Yes.
like
Yeah.
there's some funny lines in this movie, and just like the way that they talk, I think is like what's so cool about this movie, because it feels like you're transported into another time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But the things that I didn't like with the film, one of them was, and like it's not like I hated it. And I know you guys already touched on this, but Aaron Taylor Johnson, I think, like
Yeah.
he was good, but it felt at times that he was trying to keep up with everybody else around him, and he was trying to kind of like out act them in a way. Um, and it kind of showed off as that. I still think he did a solid job. And then the other thing that I didn't really like about it was, which after like hearing people's comments on it, which doesn't make sense. It takes place in Germany, but they all have English accents.
Okay, that I actually didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I didn't either until somebody commented, because I was like, I put a comment, I was like, what did you not actually like about this movie? And that was one of the things. And I was like, now that I think about it, if they're all in Germany, it takes place in Germany, why don't any of them speak German or have a German accent? It's all British.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it is really funny. I did not even think about that. That didn't even hit me.
And like I was so enthralled with the movie that doesn't really
Yeah.
bug me, but I just like
Yeah,
when you
it's
think
so
about it,
minute.
yeah, it's so minute. When you think about it, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, yeah. Like if you're making a period piece and it's like one thing that you overlook, like
Yeah,
I get it that some people are like, yeah,
But
that's
I
weird.
mean, but it did take place there. But Nicholas Holt traveled.
Yeah,
true.
Like he wasn't from there. Excuse me. There was people that traveled to his place. That so it was. I mean, so is that correct? Yes. Is it fully correct? No.
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
Mhm.
that's just like a
it's
cheap
something.
grind.
Yeah,
That's picking at something just to pick at something.
exactly.
yeah,
Justin, your thoughts?
As far as like critiques, I am right there with you guys. I think the captions are incredibly important for this
yes,
film. My theater for the most part was pretty quiet, but like this didn't shock me. I mean, I watched it at 10 a.m. on Christmas morning, so like we got about 45 minutes in, and people started yawning like really loud, and like you could tell people started getting bored, so like they were pulling out their phones. So not so a lot of distractions.
yeah,
And when you're trying to watch a film like this, like I feel like it's very important to just be 100% locked in, and I feel
yeah,
like all
Mhm.
those distractions plus having the captions too, because the accents and the dialects and stuff for some
Right.
things were kind of hard to understand for sure. But knowing the story similar to Gigi, like it wasn't anything like I so it wasn't the fact that I didn't understand what was happening. It's just like I would have loved to have like because it's so um it's not spoken in like how we talk, you know, today. It's
yeah, yeah.
old timey, you know. And then like it's such a selfish nitpick. But Orlok's mustache, like I am like when I first saw it, I was like, do I like that? I wish it. I wish they hadn't made that choice, but that's a choice that Eggers made. One, to make it his own, and
Yeah,
two, it's based on factual, like the Transylvanian,
yeah,
Yeah,
counts and things all had fantastic mustaches. So
yeah,
it's realistic that he would. But like I think it would have been more creepy if he didn't have it, and would have been like more of what I'm used to seeing for Orlok's
yeah.
Nosferatu. With that said, that is such a tiny nitpick that I didn't hate it, but I was just like, do I like the mustache? I
I
No,
th-
don't
I'm
know.
so with you because
I go ahead, Gigi.
on the kiss scene, that was the only thing that I was like I was like, "Gee, God, geez, please!" Like I could not get over it. It was so icky to me.
I think too, like the mustache at first didn't bother me, but what bothers me is like this dude has no ounce of hair on any other part of his body, but this guy has like the most magnificent mustache I've ever seen. Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
give him some hair on top or something. Put a
Yeah,
little
like, yeah,
something.
Well,
it
I
was
mean,
like just a couple of
yeah,
wispies.
he had some for sure, but yeah, that was my one. Like, if I were to like sit down and somebody say like, you gotta hate something about this, I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, the mustache, the captions,
Yeah.
that would be my like
I
I'm nitpicking. Like,
My one thing as far as Orlok, because I didn't like the reveal, but again, I think it was very true to the original reveal of Orlok. I just wish I think there was so much buildup with him actually as far as marketing and in the movie. But another thing that I personally wasn't a fan of, I loved Count Orlok's voice, and I know how much training Bill Skarsgård did for his voice, as far as like he got like a singing coach, and he was like doing these like those like crazy, what are they, Gregorian chants and stuff like that to have that voice. I did not like the wheeziness of it, because I felt like it was so hard to understand. It was already hard to understand him
Mhm.
because it's like super old timey. It's very drawn out and like, you know, just
Right.
like with a thick accent. But I didn't like that wheeziness, which I knew that he was sick. They made it a point to be like, oh, he's sick in the movie. But I just didn't like, that was like a visceral thing that I don't like. I hate like wheeziness and coughiness in
Mhm.
movies because my brain is like, I didn't like the sound of it. So that was just
Right.
another little nitpick for me.
I had a lot of little nitpicks, like,
Hmm.
throughout watching it through my experience, and, um, for it and this is just for me as the viewer, like, I didn't like, if you were to compare the hype to Nosferatu to Longlegs, I don't think the hype for Nosferatu was built up anywhere even a quarter of what it was for Longlegs.
Oh,
No.
no.
I think the
No.
marketing was respectful,
Yes.
that I wasn't so I was more hyped off of Seth's text the moment he seen it than I was off of any marketing I seen, because like
Same.
I trust his opinion, you know what I mean? So that's like where my hype factor came with. So if you haven't seen Nosferatu yet and you have a Cineplex near you and you're going to venture out to see this film, this is how I would explain it to you. When like my cinema, it has two main large monster screen feature film rooms, and then it has all those little hallway offshoots with the smaller theaters, less people, smaller screens. If I had a choice to see it on the big screen or nothing, or those little screens, I would not go see it on one of those little screens in one of
Yeah.
those little rooms, because it doesn't have the sound and the things that are necessary to have this movie, because it is not a movie. It's an experience. It's
Yeah.
something that you either are going to get gripped by it from the opening frame, or you're not. Like
Yeah.
you're going along for a ride. So like it didn't matter to me at all that I know this story, and like the mustache didn't bother me at all. I thought it added to like the creepiness of his humanness, but
Yeah.
also I thought this guy's like a million years old too. You know what I mean? Like he's like this
Yeah.
eternal, yeah, like he's like this eternal fucking monster. So of course he might be weak or have these things about it. I didn't care for the wheezing neither, but it didn't like bother me.
Yeah.
Aaron Taylor Johnson, I felt was miscast, but 45 minutes, an hour in, he grew on me. I
Yeah.
adjusted
Yeah.
to him, and it
Mhm.
wasn't like a thing where I'm gonna like discredit it a half star. He did his best. But here's the thing that was what did it for me, and why I rated it 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5 on Letterbox, and I think that it's a cinematic masterpiece, is my opinion. And the reason that I feel that way is because any nitpick I had along the way, which there were some, the way that it tells the story in the same way but with his different version, which is, imagine telling this tried and true classic 100-year-old story that people fucking cherish, and taking that on and telling it in your own way. That's you're up against it already there.
Yeah.
But I think the way that he told his story was beautiful, because it's, you know, it's the same thing, but it's something that I loved, and I loved his voice. I liked how he told it. I'm a huge Robert Eggers fan walking into this. I love The Lighthouse. I love The Witch. Northman was okay, but
Mhm.
like I could watch The Lighthouse over and over again, just because I think not only is the acting performance is phenomenal, but I think it's a modern juggernaut of filmmaking, like the aspect ratios, the way that it was shot. There's a lot of that in Nosferatu. But to lull you through this story, keep you engaged and enchanted, have a non epic reveal to keep the focus on what's going on to her, but then have that epic crescendo of the finale, which I will say on record right now, I think is the one of the greatest camera pan out final shots ever put to
Oh,
film.
Yeah.
yeah.
Not just in horror,
Oh,
all
yeah.
genres of film. Like, so any nitpick I had sitting into it up to that point, it immediately erased all of that for me. I was just like, wow. Like, there was so much wow that none of that shit even mattered to me, you know?
Yeah.
Like, so it became like the things that I don't understand that people are saying about it is like, there's a lot of people saying like, well, it's boring. Okay, but like, is it boring because it's boring, or is it boring because you as a viewer expected something different than exactly what you knew you were going to get? Like, so that's how why I don't like Hereditary. I expected something different than my expectations, so it let me down. So I think the expectation of the way the story was delivered could create it to be boring. But like, you're Nosferatu 1922 is not boring. It's boring. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's like an enthralling, enchanting type kind of story.
exactly.
So that I don't get. But the other thing, and like Justin touched on this, and so did Gigi, you've seen Bram Stoker's Dracula. You've seen these other
Yeah.
movies. Like, we know this fucking story. You know what I mean? Like
That's what that's what surprises me, because I've seen so many comments of people being like, they just ripped off Dracula, and I'm like,
Who?
who?
Yeah.
right.
I'm like sitting there going like, dude, this has been a thing since the 20s.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Right.
it's like, that's what I don't quite understand. It's like, oh, I was so hyped for Nosferatu and it's just a Dracula ripoff. It's like, this is Nosferatu. Like
Right.
it's called Nosferatu, and you walked in and you literally got Nosferatu.
Yeah.
And so I'm just
Exactly.
not understanding this whole like, it just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. What the fuck are you talking about?
I
That's
It's
and
literally the story.
right, but that's the crazy thing too, is when you ask somebody like, what did you think it was going to be? Nobody has an answer for that question.
Yeah.
I
You
think
know what I mean?
I was gonna say
Go ahead, Seth.
I think that the reason that some like some of the audiences are not sold on it is because they're going into it thinking it's gonna be this like big vampire tale. Like
Yeah.
I don't think a lot of them have seen an Eggers film before. The people who are hating on this and
No,
like
that's
Justin nailed it on the head earlier. His movies are like a theater experience. What
Yes.
you're like witnessing is an experience, and he transports you into this other world. It's not about the action or the blood and guts. It's the story that he tells through his like imagery and the score and things like that. And I don't think people realize that when they went to go see this movie. They're like, oh, there's a vampire. I want to go see this because I love vampires. I mean, we've talked about vampires before. Vampires have been the favorite thing since the beginning of time.
Right.
I will say that, because we've talked about like, this is like Eggers, it's Robert, and like, if you know who he is, like you knew exactly what this was going to be, right? But I still think that this was his most like accessible
Yeah.
film.
Oh, 100%.
Like
Yeah.
like if
More than a Northman?
like
Yes.
I
Yes.
think so,
Okay.
because
Yes.
like I personally think so, just because like I like, when I saw the trailer for the Northman and stuff, I'm just like, I know Eggers, I'm just like not into Vikings and shit. So I'm just like, whatever. But like, this was like, oh, if you're a horror fan, I feel like you should know who Robert Eggers is and you should know what to expect. But I feel like there are a lot of people that this is their first introduction
Mm-hmm.
to
Right.
Eggers.
But you
And
should also know Nosferatu in the same
yes,
breath.
and
If you're a horror lover.
100%. But I feel like this is a lot of people's like, I'm picking up the vibes of just like, oh, I love vampires, and I've never
Mhm.
seen Nosferatu. They like know of the character and things. I think this is a lot of people's like introduction to
I'd
all
agree
these
with that.
things, which
Mhm.
us for, and I feel like a lot of the community, which I'm surprised at some of the reactions I've seen from the community. I'm like, if you know Eggers and you know Nosferatu, I don't know what else you were expecting.
It's
Yeah.
exactly what you would attach to the name Robert Eggers. Like,
Yeah.
it's exactly that. GG?
I have to say that I think that like and like I agree with you, Chuck, but also at the same time, like I disagree in the sense like if you're a horror fan, you should know who Nosferatu is. But I really don't think that Nosferatu is as well known as we think because it is such an old tale.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying just I'm not saying just that movie. I'm just saying the mythos of the character. Like
Yes. No,
because it's
but
so like
yes.
because you have like the universal monsters and like Dracula,
Yes.
like it's known that comes from that and everything. I just think
But
it's a
see, I don't
common
even
name.
think
You
that
don't
that's
think?
known. I don't even
I
think that
don't.
that's known because even when I did my TikTok video,
Yeah.
SpongeBob.
every comment was, I had no idea that this is based on Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Oh,
So I
wow.
don't think that people actually know the history, and I can't like
That's fair.
yeah, I actually didn't even know that until I
Right.
was researching Nosferatu, because my first introduction of Nosferatu was SpongeBob.
With SpongeBob.
Right.
Yeah.
Was
Yep.
SpongeBob. Was
SpongeBob,
SpongeBob.
yeah.
And
Mhm.
so it's like and then it wasn't until I was like researching like and then from there it was like okay, I knew what Nosferatu was like
Mhm.
as I grew up and stuff, but it was like I still didn't watch the 1922 movie as like a
Right.
13-year-old
Well,
like you
Right,
know.
right, right.
So
you
it's like I feel like people don't actually know when they're like, "Oh, I was going into this not expecting." I think that they were expecting a Dracula-like
mhm.
movie,
Right, right,
thinking
right.
this is what old classic vampires are, actually not even knowing that Nosferatu is just a straight ripoff of Bram Stoker's
Yeah.
Dracula, but it's like but they also don't understand that that's not even what it is, because I also don't think that maybe some people have even seen the Dracula movies. They just have seen depictions of
Of it.
Dracula
Mhm.
in
That's
pop
very
culture.
fair.
You know
Yeah.
what
No,
I
that's
mean? Where they're like, "We know that he's the suave vampire, but
mhm.
have you actually seen the movie? Maybe
Right.
not." Like, you know?
You
I
Yeah.
think that that's very fair, and, like, I learned something from the assessment and your experience. I have a different experience, like, I was
Yeah.
raised like, my dad's favorite one of his favorite movies was the original Thing with James Arness, which wasn't even the original Thing,
Yeah.
and that's an old ass movie that nobody's seen because when they see the Thing, they think it's
They
like this
think
original
Mhm.
fucking thing,
yeah.
but it's just really not. So I had, like, that little bit of background, but I also, from what you were just saying, this is coming out of a time of a whole entire generation that is born that might not have any idea of any of it. And
Yeah.
you're coming on the tail end from how old The Witch is, and
Oh, yeah.
even the Lighthouse, of a
Yeah.
whole entire different audience that he's trying to please and appeal to. You had something, Seth?
Yeah, so the other thing too to like note is that the movie was banned for a while. Like there was no copies available of Nosferatu, and
No.
Right.
I think there was it didn't really hit the US until late in the like I don't know the date, but
It
I
Well,
know
was.
they tried to
It
sue
was.
them for
yeah.
It
stealing the
was. It,
story.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
the
Mhm.
court upheld it, and they ruled that all the copies were supposed to be
Yeah.
Destroyed.
Yeah.
destroyed. So
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that
It's like a
that's
That's
lot of
that's what it's so interesting, and like you guys hit it on the head, is like, and I spent like the last couple hours this morning just like kind of going through like reviews and things, and that's one thing I've learned. I just it's I'm so engrossed in this world of like horror and like the history and all that kind of stuff that I forget that people are just casual, and they're
yeah.
just like, oh,
Yeah, that's fair.
it's a vampire film, and then they
mhm.
go in and they're like, that's not what I thought I was going to get. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, like that's exactly what I thought it was going to be. So it's super interesting because like
Mhm.
just as we were leaving the theater, like families were fighting. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
well, that was the most boring shit. And this guy's like, oh, it's Christmas. I'll let you have your opinion, even though it's wrong. And it's just like, it was
Yeah, right.
right out of the gate. I was like, here we go. Like,
Right.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
said you said something very important too, Justin, and I would hate to be one of those people because I don't like people that are like gatekeepy or condescending with their tone on film. As being a TikToker, there's a lot of them that are, on that high and mighty chair of condescending talk with, this is not a movie, this is a film. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And so it's kind of kind of hypocritical because that's exactly what Nosferatu is.
yeah.
It's not a movie, it's a film. It's art.
Oh,
It's
and
it's as much of a painting as it is a movie, as it is
Mhm.
a poem or it is a song.
I literally said it. I haven't put out my review yet, which I'm like, this is gonna be fun. But like that's one of those things that call me pretentious, call me a snob,
Yeah,
whatever it is.
because you're
But
gonna
like
get that.
this is a gothic romanticism painting brought to life.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
Absolutely.
it's exactly what it is. And listen, I mean, you brought it up as comparing, not really comparing it to Long Legs, but like the hype for Long Legs was here. I
Mhm.
got shit on for months about I'm prepared to get shit on for
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nosferatu
it's
as
just the way
well.
it is.
Call me pretentious, call me a snob, whatever it is. But just like, man, if there's like it, I went to bed last night and I sleep with a fan every night. Doesn't matter
Mhm.
how cold it is. I got these black like what are they called, like
The blackout
like
curtains?
blackout curtains,
Yeah.
Nice.
right?
Yeah,
And my fan started blowing my black curtain that laying there,
I
and
love that.
it was like 10 hours after seeing this film, and my curtain blew, and the first thought was, "Oh, fuck."
Yeah.
Like,
He's
I
coming
just
for
Yep.
me.
at first, I'm like, "He's coming," and whoa. That opening scene, like, that it just that curtain blew, and, like, the film is just embedded in
Yeah.
my brain, and I'm just like, it's not that's where I say, like, it's not a movie, man.
No.
It's just like it's
But
just
it's
fun.
but I think that the fact that it's getting such, split discourse on
Mhm.
how people felt about it is more of a commending it for the art that it truly is, because you could take a million people to the museum to look at the same
Mhm.
painting and they're not all going to like it or interpret it the
Yeah.
Exactly.
same way. So the fact that it's creating discourse and conversation is a testament to how much of a piece of art that it is, which that I appreciate about it, on a whole completely different level, because I think, the substance was great. Loved it. But the substance also put me in a world. Like, it took me out of my theater chair and put me into a world. I Smile 2 did that a little bit, but it had too much to take me out of that world. But everything I liked this year, that that I loved, transported me somewhere. Like, I didn't just watch it as a form of entertainment, like You'll Never Leave Me Alone. That Shutter
Mhm.
original came
Mhm.
out. Like, now granted, a lot of people didn't like that, but that movie transported you into that trailer. You were a
Yeah.
Mhm.
part of the
Yep.
aesthetic of that film. And that was like a general theme of a lot of my favorite films this year. But nothing took me to the place that Nosferatu did. Like
Oh,
like
yeah.
that opening frame, and the deal with his boss, and you knew where he was going, and they said Transylvania, and like then it got to that sprawling cobblestone street shot outside, and like I was fucking there. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like it took me there, and I allowed it too. You know what I mean? Like, and that's why it says, succumb to the darkness, because it very much brings you into that place. And I thought that was brilliant. um, so into like the next segment, because we basically have thrown out every single thing about it, spoiler wise. Um,
Seth, did you want to say something?
Yeah,
he does.
I had a
Mhm.
question for you
He
guys
does.
actually.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So because like we've all experienced this movie in different ways, what was the moment that you knew that this movie was it for you? Because there's a few moments in this movie that just like have been ingrained in my fucking brain since I left that
Mhm.
theater. So I want to know from like each of you, what was the moment that you knew that like, oh, this is fucking great? And go with you, Gigi.
Oh God. Let's just start with Justin.
Yeah,
Justin, let's
Justin,
start
go
with
ahead.
you.
I'm gonna say I'm putting it in my review. I put it in my notes. This film grabbed me from the opening scene.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Like that shot, and it was in the trailer, but that shot of Lily Rose levitating from her bedroom and that
Mhm.
curtain, and you see the classic, Orlok shadow,
Yeah.
and I was like, all in. Like, and like that's a scene that I had already seen, but just seeing it within the context of like how he built up to that scene and then what came after, the whole like, because I wouldn't say that this film is necessarily scary,
Mm.
but it does have some like jump scares that I thought were very effective. Like it from like that, the beginning it said Nosferatu, all that kind of stuff. I was like, there's no shot. I'm gonna hate this. There's just no way.
Yeah.
GG.
I I I don't know. I did love the opening sequence though. I thought it was so beautiful, and I love how it was like they had such amazing like shadow play and like contrasty lights that parts of the film felt super black and white. Like even though we knew it wasn't like black, I don't actually think it was black and white. I think it was just very like desaturated because of like the lights were off and everything. So I loved that. But I'm trying to think of like the moment that really got me. The one part that I absolutely loved though was when Lily Rose Depp was talking about like her dream. I love that she was like when she was like, "Oh, and I saw like death staring at me and I never felt so
Mm.
happy."
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
loved that sequence. I thought that that was such like I think very different because if I'm remembering correctly, and Chuck, you could correct me. I don't think in the original Nosferatu that that Ellen was obsessed, had this like connection to death, right?
No,
That was like his
that was his
yeah,
that was his
that was his
reimagining from her
reimagining.
perspective. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
Mhm.
because
I
she
do
wasn't
love
that
this
big of a
connection.
she wasn't that big of a thing. Like,
She was
she more came in at the end,
yeah, she was an
right?
accent, not the
Yeah.
centerpiece. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, it was
Mhm.
more so at the end. Like we do get introduced to her in the beginning, but she
Mhm.
wasn't like she is the emphasis in Nosferatu in
Absolutely.
this movie. But I do love that she's like has this draw to death and
Mhm.
just darkness. So I think but again, I think I have to experience it again
Yeah.
because my experience was just completely ruined.
It's better a second
Right,
watch.
but
Yeah.
even to have an experience that was tarnished by your theater going experience, like most of what you have to say was positive.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Which
Oh
is
yeah.
it's a testament to the film. I am much like Justin. Like I knew from the gate. You know what I mean? Like the opening, the way that it came onto the screen, and like I said, I did have nitpicks, but the things that did it for me, like because the whole entire time, no, I wasn't thinking about it consciously because I was so enthralled in it. But the only expectation I had on it is I thought it was going to go like really into weird territory like The Lighthouse did. Like I was expecting some real weird Eggers, and he played it kept it to the chest and kind of straight, which I appreciated his restraint. So I was thinking like, do I like this better than The Lighthouse popped in my head a couple of times because I love The Lighthouse. But what did it for me and put it into masterful territory for me was the concentration on Lily Rose Depp from her perspective. I was just so enthralled. She sold it so much for me. Like, just her mannerisms and her body and her movements. And she was so fucking enchanting and haunting. But, and this centers back to, and maybe this is perspective to think differently of your experience, but the reveal of him and it not being like that monumental or what you expected or anything, but then you also get that shot of what he's capable with when he eats them kids.
Yep.
And like that shit was
Oh
horrifying.
my
Yeah.
god, I
Like
love
because
that scene.
it was so fucking unexpected because it wasn't a
Yes.
jump scare. It was like you have this decrepit old motherfucker that is possessing this woman. You have all this slow story. You're into his allure, but it's like here, you're gonna have this one flashing moment to know exactly who you're fucking around with. And that shit, look, I got chill bumps on my arm just thinking about it. And I think that was as impactful. The only thing I can compare that child swallowing scene to is when that dog grabs that little girl when he
Yeah.
Yeah.
lurks,
Yeah.
because it was that jarring to me because I didn't expect it.
But it was done so tastefully.
No,
Mhm.
it was.
Yeah.
Like
It
it
was.
was like
It wasn't for shock value. It was to
yeah,
let you
no,
know
I
his
mean
power that
that
this is a
happened
monster.
and literally like 4 people in my theater went, "Oh shit."
Yeah. That was my
Like,
reaction.
I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, they're like, "Oh shit." And I'm like, "Yes." Like
Yeah,
it was so good. Yeah.
yeah, because it let you know what you were dealing with, and and then what really transcended it for me, and I compared it to and I'm going to say it again. I'll probably say it again before we're done recording. That end,
Oh,
I
beautiful.
compared it's the Sistine Chapel
I
of film endings. Like I almost like I had fucking tears in my eyes because it was so fucking beautiful, like haunting and
Tragic.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
posted on Threads this morning that I need the last frame of Nosferatu printed, framed, and hung above my bed. I just
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It's
need it. I
Like
beautiful.
a
need it.
like
Yeah.
oil on canvas
Yep.
tapestry hanging on your
Yes.
ceiling because it's like
100%.
it's that haunting. Seth?
For me, so I was hooked from the start, but the one scene that like honestly blew my fucking mind was the scene with Thomas and Ellen when they're in the room talking to each other
Oh yeah.
about like her confessing who he was to her essentially, and then like
Oh yeah.
her eyes rolling back in her head, like the drool coming from her mouth, like her pulling the shirt, just like her performance in that scene just like put my jaw on the fucking floor. I was like amazed at how incredible she was. And I said this in my review. I know Lily Rose Depp was replaced for Anya Taylor-Joy was supposed to be in that role. I don't think anybody could have done this better than Lily Rose
I
Depp.
agree.
I think
Oh my god. Or
she
imagine Harry Styles
Yeah.
as freaking Nicholas Holt's character.
but that whole sequence and the fact that she turned in from like literally in seconds from like loving to just like, oh, you don't actually care about me. You were about to give me away for
Yes.
money. And like, and then she like tried seducing him, and then they had this like crazy sex scene. Like it was just
Yeah.
wild.
Well,
It was.
what I love about that stuff too is it kind of goes back to like it was very play like because
Mhm.
Eggers does
Yes.
long one take scenes, and
Yeah,
so
it's very
you just
theatrical.
it vary, and it's like
Mhm.
there wasn't a lot of like, oh, like this take wasn't good, so we're just gonna cut the camera and then like go back to like when Lily nailed it, motherfucker. She just on a dime swaps and her body is
It's
changing
nuts.
it. The camera never cuts and
No.
it's just like
Yeah.
Mhm.
phenomenal.
I also
I
go ahead, Gigi.
No, I was gonna say I'm excited to watch it again because I am gonna be totally transparent. There were some scenes where Lily Rose Depp was like doing her whole like possession like movement that I wasn't actually a fan of. Like
Mhm.
I thought that performance was great. I actually just don't know if I liked how Eggers wrote that in. Like I
Mhm.
think she nailed the scene. Did I like it? I actually don't know because there were moments
Mhm.
where I was like, I don't know, but this is I'm not really sold on this whole like drooling possession stuff or like her
Mhm.
eyes rolling backwards. Um, yeah,
I'm
there
really
was
ex
something
I'm
else I was
really
gonna say. Go ahead, go
excited
ahead.
I'm really excited to sit in the center of my because I have my living room set up with I mean, I love my theater experience because I'm a single dad too. I don't do much but watch movies, so I
Mhm.
invested in it. But like, I got a nice surround sound and the way that the acoustics are and the thing. Like, I can't wait to sit in my recliner 7 feet away from my
Yep.
80-inch TV, complete pitch black dark, no kids, volume on
Yeah.
90, and
Subtitles. Subtitles.
that's
Succumb.
yeah, right, with the captions on and succumb
Yep.
again, because I think as much as it is a theater going experience and seeing it on IMAX, I get all that. I very much think that this could be digested. It should be digested alone. You know what I mean? Like it's something to
Yes.
experience in the
Yep.
piece of your own head because it just will work better, I believe.
I actually totally agree with you. There
Yeah.
are some movies where I'm like, no, this is a theater going experience. And I thought Nosferatu was going to be that way.
It's
But
not.
honestly, no.
Mhm.
I think watching it completely alone in pitch darkness is actually the move.
Or if I would say, and I didn't see it in this format, but I did read about it. There's a couple like mom and pop cinemas around the United States,
Mhm.
like in art little art house home theaters that are showing it in 35 millimeter.
Ooh,
So
Belcourt
And
Theater,
yeah,
Nashville.
and I would, if I had that around me, which we don't, because I checked when I seen somebody review it, I would go see it again on the 35 millimeter in
Yeah,
a small art house, because people that are seeking out to see something on 35 millimeter film aren't going to be casual film goers that just want
exactly.
to
Exactly.
stumble in. These are people that are going to appreciate the lost art of filmmaking. So
That's
I
my
would.
second viewing is gonna be
Mhm.
at Belcourt because
so
it's one of, like, what, 5 theaters in the world that are
Yeah.
showing at 35 millimeter?
Stephen Lackey messaged me and he said that the crackles of the grain of the film just
Can't
add
imagine.
so much to the aesthetic and the sound design of the film that it becomes so much more immersive, and like that's film to me,
Love,
you know what I mean, like,
love it.
so
Yeah.
Yeah.
mhm.
see it in 35 millimeter because that's where I saw it at the Arrow. That was the first experience, and I honestly felt like I was alone in that theater. That's how like incredible that
Yeah.
film looked. And I was gonna
Mhm.
say, because I know you guys have mentioned IMAX, I don't recommend seeing it in IMAX. I saw it in IMAX the other day, and like the sound, you can hear sentences and they're speaking so much better. But I think it did a disservice to the way the film looked because it's a dark film, and in the IMAX, it
Right.
was very hard to see a lot of the shots
Mhm.
versus seeing it in 35 millimeters. So I would say if you can see it in 35 or in Dolby, where you can hear
Yeah.
the
Well,
sound.
that's and it's amazing because a lot of people won't notice the difference because like the digital depths that they can go with the darkness of blacks, and this is a very dark
Yeah.
film, like
Yes.
Yeah.
though the contrast of the blacks on actual film versus digital, like they're able to get different depths,
Yeah.
to everything. So I do want to see it on that.
Were you
But
gonna
it's
say something, Justin?
mhm.
I just have I've got a random question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead.
So I've seen, and the only reason why I bring this up is because I saw several comments. So I want to get your guys' thoughts. I
Ooh.
read comments of people saying that they felt that this movie romanticized SA.
I have not seen a single person say
Yeah, me
that, and
I've
either.
I think
seen
that
I've
is
seen
wild.
Yeah, it's
four,
wild.
5 different people say that they felt it romanticizes SA because she was like, "No, I don't really want this with you, Count Orlok." Orlok's, "Well, you're gonna succumb, kind of thing. I'm gonna kill your entire family and your town."
Yeah.
This, that's I was one. I didn't pick that up.
No,
I didn't know that
not at
was because
all.
I just don't like. I know the story going in, but I like I don't want to say I discredited it, but I saw the first one. I'm kind of, well, that's wild, and then I kept scrolling, and I saw it again, and I was like, okay. And then I saw it a third and a fourth time, and I was like, am I missing?
Yeah,
Oh,
no, I personally think that, and I don't actually even think that this is personally, I think that this is actually how it was supposed to be interpreted, was that Lily Rose Depp's character, like Ellen, was drawn to darkness and death and melancholy, these like dark feelings, and darkness wanted her to succumb to that, and she was just like, no. So I don't actually think it was like SA, it was like people in life are drawn to darkness or death or things that aren't like good and bright and happy.
Yeah,
I think
that's
that was what, and it was like this feeling of being like, no, I know that I shouldn't be, but I am. Like,
mhm.
where it's like I am, I do have this like fantasy of death and darkness
Yeah,
and
right. Well,
sadness.
And she
right.
had the power at the end. Like, it was her to choose to
Yeah, it
offer
was
herself
willing.
up willing, and to know that she was the reason he would die if she gave herself up. Like, she had the power all along. It was never really
Yeah,
him.
yeah. No, I fully agree. I saw it so
Weird.
many times, and
I
I was like,
think
I
that's
have to ask the squad this because I
crazy.
didn't get it, but
I think that's really reaching on something somebody read from somebody else that's now taking a snowball effect,
Yes.
Yeah.
because
mhm.
it's very much like succumbing to the darkness is the tagline, and we've all mentioned it over and over again, but it's like the happily married woman or the happily married man in the grocery store that meets that person that lights something inside of them that they know is not good for them, and it's like it
Yes.
gives you a tangible depiction of how to deal with those feelings, yet coming from this years ancient old vampire with these haunting things. Like
Yeah.
I would have never picked that up or thought that. I think that's
No.
And
ludicrous.
I don't mean to
Yeah.
be that person, but I'm like, the media literacy. I'm like, guys, she literally had this whole monologue about her
Right.
dreaming of death and
Yeah.
being, she was never happier than death facing her. And I'm like,
Yeah,
guys,
like
that's not SA. That's just
the
like,
beginning of the
that's
film,
crazy.
like I was so lonely and this, that, and the other that she called out to something, and that's just who she
Yeah.
answered and all that. I'm right there with you, but I just saw it so many times back to back. I
Mhm.
was like,
Wow.
like, did I misinterpret? There's no
Yeah.
way. I was just like,
You
I
didn't.
just
No.
had to ask.
No.
I was like, there's no shot on the planet this is a thing, but
No.
No. Wow. That's so interesting.
well, but that kind of
I
goes
want to read more
into
about this
Yeah.
discourse
that
because
goes
I'm like,
into kind of maybe some of the negative reviews that it's getting as well. It's just kind of
yes,
like,
yes.
which kind of goes back to like not knowing the story. This is people's first introduction to like the Nosferatu Dracula story and all this kind of stuff. It was just like, oh, that's how it's being taken in 2024.
Go read the book,
I'm
Yeah.
people.
I mean, but it's to be
Thing.
expected, I guess, like as film lovers and everything, because people walking into this for their first experience is the same as that there were genuinely people that went to see Terrifier 3 without seeing the other ones and had no idea what they were walking into. It's like
Yeah.
you do no kind of reading whatsoever. It's just like you go and like Russian roulette a movie at the theater without knowing anything about it. Like I kind of know what I'm walking into.
Yeah.
So that's our general thoughts of what we thought about the experience of Nosferatu. And as you see, this is a very, we're all kind of on the same page, but we're very much in different books with our feelings. So,
Yeah.
because even though you might not have liked aspects of it, everybody, at least one, we agree that we respect the technical aspect of the magnitude of this film. And some things work for some that doesn't work for others. And like, that's what makes art. And I think we all appreciate that in our own little ways. And we hope you as an audience are able to like veer away from what you read and veer away from the, whether the review is glazing it and saying it's the greatest thing in the world or it's the worst thing in the world or whatever it is. This is definitely a film that I think everybody here will agree with me. This is a personal experience that you must go decide for yourself. You must walk
Yes.
in, use your own mind, not listen to anybody else, and allow it to do what it does. And if it doesn't affect you in a positive way, it's okay, because it's film, it's all subjective. But I would encourage you, if you're on the fence, to at least stick your toes in and go for the experience, because it's going to make you feel feelings, whether they're positive or negative. Like, you're not going to not have feelings, like, because it's powerful in that direction. So walking out on that, does anybody have any closing thoughts for our audience about Nosferatu? And then we will wrap this up. Seth?
I think
GG.
I see Wednesday over there playing with the squeaky toy.
Mhm.
This is a random thought that just hit me. I loved the film. I thought it was so beautiful. I can't wait to watch it again because of my first experience. But there is one thing that really did bug me, and it's this one scene when they're making out on the floor, Ellen and Thomas, and then the scene, and then it pans into her hair, into her braids. I absolutely hated that shot. Like, I was like, this is a bad shot. But that was just my personal opinion, but I had to get that out there because that stuck out to me so much.
It was bugging her. Yeah.
That I truly hated that scene.
Yeah.
I was like, I do not like that angle. So that's just my final thoughts. But overall, I give it a 9 out of 10. I thought it was beautiful for even my experience being tainted. Justin?
And
No,
Justin, when you're finished with your closing comments, please let the audience know who you are again, where they can find you, and plug yourself up a little bit.
No, thank you guys for having me, because I listen to this podcast every week, and whether I'm in my office or my car, I'm having conversations with you for even Brian. And
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Love you, Brian.
And
Bye, Win.
I'm involved in the conversation, and you guys just never respond. So it's nice to have responses. No, I feel the same. I I'm very much excited to see it a second time. I feel the same way that Chuck was saying. I feel like I'm such a I will always champion the theater experience. You should go to
Yeah.
the theater. You should see films in theater, because if you don't go to the theater, it affects the box office. They don't make, they're not going to make certain films if it doesn't do well. With that said, theater etiquette these days is fucking horrendous. And we've compared these two films, not that they're any like similar whatsoever, but my first experience with Long Legs was by myself in a theater. If I would have gotten the same experience with Nosferatu by myself at home or in a theater, this would have easily, I think, been a 10 out of 10. Walking out on my theater experience, I gave it like a 4.5 out of 5, so like a 9. But with that said, seeing it at home in my space in the pitch black, I can easily see this thing being a 10. Like, I just think that there's some things that I was just distracted enough, some captions, so some things, and it's just an experience that I fully think at most. I know I've got a Regal card that I go spend 55 cents for a ticket. If you've got that kind of vibe and you're on the fence, go spend 55 cents and go see this fucking thing. It's fantastic.
And
where can they find you?
Oh,
ahead.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. So SlasherTalk. I'm on TikTok. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Instagram. It's either SlasherTalk, one word, or SlasherTalk Horror. Yeah.
Yeah, we love you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be linked in the comments, and
It'll be linked in the
well,
comments, and if you ever have any directors or studios that are listening, Justin also is a wonderful and greatly talented graphic designer who is actually the designer of our logo. So hit him up for some movie posters.
They're incredible.
Please.
you may have seen his ad campaign for a very small film called Terrifier 3.
Terrifier 3.
Yes.
Art the Clown bathroom mirror poster was done by our friend Justin here. And
Yes.
that has been seen by the entire world.
It's a UK
Yes.
cover.
It's so funny. I physically drew that 3 with fake blood on my bathroom mirror.
Oh my God, really? Fun fact. You heard it here
Yeah,
first.
fun fact. Like, it's not my mirror. I transposed the 3 on
Yeah.
the mirror, but my roommates walk by. They're like, "What the fuck are you doing?"
That
I was
is
like, "Leave
so
me alone."
It's cool.
I was like, "Let me live
I
my
love
life."
that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great to know. Seth, what are your closing thoughts?
Yes.
Closing thoughts are, and I know some of you might not agree with me, but I think it's probably in my top 5 favorite movies of all time.
Ooh.
I've never really, like I said, never felt anything like that. And when I first saw that movie, like there was a moment during it where literally it just felt like there was nobody else in the theater with me. Like I felt like I was in this movie with Robert Eggers directing it, and I just like the acting blew me away, the way it looks, the way it makes you feel. I loved every single minute of it, and I'm seeing it for a third time tonight. So
Oh, hell yeah.
Love
I
that.
love that for you.
yeah.
That's awesome. Chuck, what are your final thoughts on Nosferatu 2024 by Robert Eggers?
I love what everybody had to say and everybody's input. My theater experience was with 13 other people. I had
So lucky.
my own row. And it was in a large, it wasn't in one of them little small shitty theaters. It was in a big theater, and I succumbed to the darkness. It's my number 1 movie of 2024, and
Oh,
I love the substance, and I actually just am changing my list because the substance is getting booted out of number 2, which I did not think would happen. Long Legs is now going to be my number 2 because I watched it again after I just revisited, and I liked it even fucking more.
nice.
But
Love
if I
that.
had to compare this to that, this is leaps and bounds. You know, like I have chills like talking about it. And I thought it was brilliant. And the thing about Eggers, you may not have liked The Lighthouse, but I encourage you to watch it again because every time I watch The Lighthouse, there's a little extra or something hidden or something in a shot that like adds to the allure of what he's conveying. And I know that that's in this film. I know that there's things that it's so epic and on a grand scale, it's hard to take it all in at one time, especially if you had like distractions or anything like that. So like I cannot wait to succumb again and again and again and again. So I loved it. Listen, just go see the movie, make your own decision, interpret it for yourself. Anybody that's listening, we have a lot of different ways that you can support us here at Dark Screen Society. Gigi's going to take us out. We appreciate every single person that's out there listening, liking, sharing, and subscribing our content. And, you know, if you don't succumb to the darkness of Nosferatu, please succumb to the subscription of the Dark Screen Society.
I love that.
Gigi, please take us out.
Thank you guys for listening this week. And Justin, thank you so much for being here
Yay.
with us this
Absolutely.
week. Everybody, please go follow, like, subscribe, everything, especially on YouTube for Slasher Talk. I know he is trying to boost that YouTube this year. Slasher Talk is like our honorary 5th member of Dark Screen Society. We talk about him every single week. We love him. He's so talented. But you can find us on all podcast platforms. We also have a Ko-fi in case you want to donate monetarily, but just liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing really helps us. And that is a free way to support. And we will also have a podcast episode on Monday talking about our 2024 horror movies, right? Yes, our fave. So please keep a lookout for that. That's going to be super exciting. And our lovely Irish man, just kidding, Scottish man, will be back.
Scotland.
Brian, we miss you, Brian.
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 Oh my
He
gosh.
hates baby
He
talk.
hates baby talk. I love it.
Ryan.
It's the best.
So thank you so much for listening, and we love you. Stay haunting, and don't forget to
Succumb.
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 Bye.
Bye.
Love you. Bye.